Gross, and welcome to Two on the Aisle. As I'm sure you know, there's not much happening in the theater these days, so we decided to go to our archives and get out a couple of interviews that we've done over the years. And tonight, we'll be talking to Carol Channing, Sandy Duncan, and Hersey Felder. You know, sometimes what happens before an interview can be just as interesting as the interview itself. Here in this 1997 interview, Carol Channing learns my name before the interview and makes sure to use it during the interview.
Hello, Charles Grossi.
Gross. G-R-O-S-S.
Yes, thank you, Charles Gross.
A show on the theater, kind of like Siskel and Ebert for the theater.
I see.
I've seen 2 out of 3 of your Broadway dollies.
Oh, no. Oh, thank you.
Are you ready?
Barry Gross.
Hey, Charlie Gross. Barry's the other gentleman.
You're Charlie Gross.
That's right, yes.
Charlie Gross. Charlie Gross. Hello, Bob. Hi, my girl just talked to you.
Okay. Well, how could you do a tribute to Jerry Herman without Carol Channing? I see you even wore red for the evening.
Hello, Charlie Gross.
Hello.
Oh, yes, that's right. That's right, it's red in honor of Jerry Herman. I just saw him a few hours ago, Charlie. I got on the plane in this outfit so I could get here tonight from Los Angeles. He had a what do you call those? A triple bypass and for 6 hours, and he can't be here tonight, so he sent me to accept his award, and I'm so proud to be your disappointment act.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Of course, we'll miss him, but...
He's as healthy as a bed bug.
Oh, good.
I never saw anybody, haven't seen him for years look that good.
Oh, well, that's good. So
He ate steak, baked potato, and butterscotch pudding 2 hours after the operation.
Do you think he'll write another musical or two?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, Jerry can't stop.
Now, you were in probably his most famous musical, Hello, Dolly, but that was such a big hit, and yet on the road you almost closed with Dolly originally?
Before we came into New York. Well, Mr. Merrick decided to close it, so Gower Champion said, how much money have you all got? We threw it in, and he came back and said, well, I think you're all great, and he was the sweetest pie ever after.
And the show was at one point the longest running musical on Broadway.
Oh, yes, but it was, the longest, until they got to these years of... You see, musicals used to run a year, and they were called smash hits.
Now, I noticed you were here tonight with the director of the evening, Leroy Reams. He's been doing Dolly almost as long as you have, either as an actor, as a director.
Yeah, do you know him? He's your friend?
I've never met him personally, but I saw him when you first brought Dolly back, and I saw him in 42nd Street, and he's directed you.
Yeah, well, the most intelligent thing about Leroy is that he knew that Gower Champion, the original, don't fiddle with lightning in a bottle. And I was there when Gower did it, and it was fabulous. And Leroy is bright enough to know, don't fool with it. And he just reproduced it exactly. He was wonderful. I think he's a very, very intelligent man.
Now, had you ever thought about doing Mame, which is the other second most famous Jerry Herman musical?
Actually, Jerry was saying, please leave Dolly. I've written Mame and I want you to do it. And I said, Jerry, I can't. You get a smash hit like this. I was lucky. I had 2 smash hits and many other shows, but 2 smash hits instead of just 1, and I'm very grateful. And I said, I can't do it. I can't leave Dolly. I want to bring it all around the world, and I did. And I said, Jerry, I know Angela Lansbury is the one to get. I'm proud of that. Everybody says I did it, but I did it.
Hey, Angela owes you a big one. Big favor.
Well, no, she did it all by herself. She did it very gorgeously, just like I wanted her to.
I can never believe it when I read that Dolly was not really written with you in mind.
Oh, thank you. That means I'm a good actor.
Absolutely.
A lot of people say, oh, it's typecasting. Well, that's the greatest compliment in the world. I'm nothing like her. I mean, I sure am in love with her. I think she's a great monumental character.
She's a classic in the musical theater. She really is. Will you be bringing her back? I think every 15 years you're supposed to bring her back.
15 years, and so you just wait for 15 years, and we'll be there.
Okay, I'll be there too.
All right.
I look forward to seeing you.
And Jerry Herman will be there too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Thank you, Charlie.
I've been a fan of Sandy Duncan for many years, so I was thrilled to interview her during her run in Chicago as Roxy Hart. I learned 3 things. There's a lot of steel in this woman. She's not afraid to speak her mind, and she doesn't feel that she's as nice as people think she is.
How do you like being a bad girl for a change?
I basically am a bad girl, so that's a misconception right off the bat. I've played a lot of good girls my whole life because I did it when I was young, and I did it pretty well, and that's what I got to do a lot more of.
I'm noticing all the bad girl things you've been doing lately since you got the role. I don't know if breaking your foot was a self-mutilation thing or not.
No, that was purely an accident. I was rehearsing, fell down those stairs, and broke my foot and delayed my coming into the show here.
But you're better now.
Yeah, much better. Yes and no. Have you interviewed people in Chicago before, or Fosse, or?
No, you're the first.
Well, let me be the first to complain then. Okay. We all have it's hard. So when you're doing like this schedule we're on, 5 on a weekend, you just kind of go from acupuncturist to chiropractor to physical therapist to keep you in the show. It's strenuous.
I actually interviewed Gwen Verdon once, but she had stopped dancing at that point.
Bliss.
She had some great stories about Bob's Fosse and Georgia, but apparently he was the only one who ever dared call him George.
Who, Bob?
Yeah. Now, I'm just thinking of some of the other things you've been doing. Beating up your son on the Drama Desk Awards.
Yes. Yeah, I did that. In terms of just bad behavior, it's nothing gross, but just in terms of, it's just how people perceive me. It's not quite as, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, as sweet. I'd put a gun to me if I thought about myself the way most people do. I go, put her out of her misery. She's just too sweet for words.
And finally, interrupting Dame Edna herself.
Yes.
I think, on a revenge thing, I think. So
Well, she's always complaining, or not really complaining, but saying, you know, that adorable Sandy Duncan's right next door. And she's got her little glass up to the wall to see how much fun we're having, so try and keep it down. So he does that so I had a bunch of us put our ear against a glass to the wall, and I said, I'm not the only one listening. We had a picture made up, and I took it over to him during his performance.
what was his / her reaction?
Oh, well, he's so fast on his feet. I think he had a premonition that I was coming anyway, so he had quite a lot of chatter that's, it seemed totally spontaneous, but may not have been. But it was great fun. The audience loved it. In fact, I've been asked if I do that every night. Somebody said, do you do that every night? I went, no, it's a one-time deal. Then the following week, he was standing in our wings, full slap drag. He went, hello, darling. And I said, hi. He says, look at what you're making me do. I'm a bad girl.
I'm sure I think he would fit right into your cast.
I think he would, too, and have a ball.
Now, you take a very interesting approach to Roxy. Basically, a woman kills her husband, her boyfriend, and tries to parlay it into a vaudeville career. Mm-hmm. You took a very interesting approach to that.
Tell me what
I read that she lives in the fantasy world.
Well, I think I think when you do roles, you have to have specifics. So I created a very specific person with very specific psychological problems, and she just doesn't quite get it. I liken her to a toddler. She's just kind of right in the moment, those be here now people that she really is, and she doesn't think about consequence, and she does exactly what she needs to do to get herself ahead. It's not that she's mean, she just sort of is without conscience. She didn't have a good upbringing, let's put it that way. And she's sorry for things she does, I think. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't killed him, but she had to at the moment.
Well, she seems to be having a lot of fun with you playing her.
Yeah, Roxy's a party girl, and I think the fun, too, is just the fact that she dances on her feet so well, and, is such a streetwise person and picks up quickly. She's not dumb. She's amoral, but dumb she's not. She sees what needs to be done, and I can do this. She's like a little chameleon,
Were you worried about the audience just getting angry at her?
Well, that's a possibility, especially now. Ernie Sabella's just joined the company, and he's such a, I'm afraid they're going to throw poison darts at me at the end of the show, but they don't, because I think there's enough of everybody represented in Roxy that I think people see glimpses of themselves very often, so that keeps them from hating me.
Just getting back to your image, before I did the interview, I was asking people, when I say Sandy Duncan, what do you think? And I got someone, well, she's Peter Pan. No, she's funny face. No, she's the weak, thin girl.
No, she's Barney and the Backyard Gang. It depends on when people, some people go, I saw you on that commercial where your skin was it, no, it's like anything. I know people, as you do, from the first time I recognized them and filed it in my computer card. So it just depends on when somebody entered the picture.
Now, one of the roles that you're very known for is Peter Pan. You were between Mary Martin and Kathy Rigby. Were you able to see the Rigby production?
I wouldn't go. And Kathy knows that. We've talked about it because everybody has their own take. It's a very beloved thing to me, and I would have to be back there being phony, going, you're the best Peter Pan in the world. I'd be lying because I loved what I did, and I'd be comparing, and it's not fair. She doesn't need that in her life, and I don't either.
Did you ever have the urge to do it again?
I was going to do it again about 6 years ago, maybe it's 7, maybe it's more, maybe it's 10. They wanted me to film it for television because Mary Martin's tape is charming and vintage, but it's a little dated in terms of the acting style and the physical production of it. And they couldn't get the rights because Tom McCoy, who's Kathy's husband, owned them. And so I think he is going to produce some sort of a video or something with her.
I saw that. I remember you had a very nice laser Tinkerbell.
Yes, we did. That's right.
A whole bunch of nice animals. It was fun.
Yeah.
On that. Now, you're also doing concerts.
Mm-hmm. And it's been a blessing because in our business, you never know where your next job's coming. And what that affords you is a certain autonomy. You can go, I'll go that month, I'll go that. So you control a little bit, and you know that you're covering your private school payments and you're living in New York payments. So it helps to have that as a cushion. And I love doing it. You go to places you wouldn't even imagine they have a symphony orchestra of 70 pieces, and you do your concert there, and just these wonderfully receptive people all over.
What do you do with the orchestras? You sing? Do you sing with them? Do you conduct?
No, what I do is my husband and another friend of ours, Guy Stroman, we do basically a Broadway evening. It's very personal. We talk to the audience a lot. But the audiences are so excited to see us because in concerts very often when Broadway people go out, they stand in front of a mic with a black dress on and just sing song after song. We have dance, we have it's like a little musical comedy evening.
You really like performing with your husband, don't you?
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Did it, are you planning another Broadway show with him? I know you've done one at the Music Hall, Radio City?
Yes, and we did umpteen variety specials back in the 60s and 70s when they had those. Remember, everybody who had a name had his own variety show. So we danced a lot on that, and I love working with Don. He's mostly in real estate now, though.
I do real estate also sometimes.
Everybody in New York does.
Is he going to run for president now, then?
No. I wouldn't, no.
One real estate mogul running for president is enough.
Enough.
How long will you be in Chicago?
I'm definitely here till January 16th, and now there's discussion of my extending, which I will be happy to do if they reinstate a real Broadway schedule, not this circus schedule that we do.
What have you got now?
5 shows on a weekend, so we do Friday, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday, and it's too much on anybody's body. People can't, there's no recovery time vocally, physically, and also it starts to wear down the morale psychologically of the company.
To do something.
It's not. There was a reason they invented the Broadway schedule. I mean, we're not animatronics here, and there's more of that corporate producing in New York. So it's like, yeah, send them out, do 3 a day. I mean, scares me.
Hersey Felder has thrilled audiences over the years with his portrayals of composers such as Irving Berlin and George Gershwin. He not only performs these characters, he actually plays his own music on the piano. Leslie Hoban Blake and I got to interview him during the run of Maestro, his onstage biography of Leonard Bernstein.
Now, you know, there are lyricists who use the word love a dozen times in a love song. Sondheim brilliantly doesn't use the word love even once. So the sound of love has to be in every single note. A tritone, an augmented fourth, because of the way it sounds, also known as the devil's interval. I want her, I need her. And because this is a love story, the devil's interval has to resolve. I need her, Maria. I've just met a girl named Maria, and suddenly that name will never be the same to me.
Quickly, it's a show where you play the maestro, Leonard Bernstein. You tell us the story of his life, which is that he would much rather have been known as a composer than as a conductor. And then you play him, you talk about him from young manhood into all the way through his career.
It's less that I talk, I mean, that's what it appears to be, but what I have really done is, I call it theatrical impressionism, this idea of taking elements from a person's life to create a portrait rather than telling a story, because there's a lot I've left out. Now, none of what I've left out would make a difference if I told it. You know, it would just repeat things. The idea is really to pick character traits that actually ultimately amount to a whole, you know?
And you do your own piano playing live in the show.
Yes, which is apparently a very different thing, you know, and I'm only finding this out now. I thought that, well, you know, somebody was talking to me. Richard Maltby came the other night. He's doing Madame Suzatska now. They're doing it with Garth Drabinsky in Toronto. This should be interesting, especially if this comes to New York. It could be
is he
really
directing?
As a Canadian, you have a special interest in that.
Well, or as a person not in jail.
In Garth, yes.
Is he directing it? No, I think he's doing the lyrics. And we were just talking about it in the lobby after the show, and I said, so your pianist is going to play? He says, no. And, you know, I mean, Hugh Jackman didn't play when he did the Peter Allen piece. So, you know, Beautiful didn't play. And it's interesting, I think that's part of the thing that, I don't want to use the word makes me unique, because I'm not particularly unique, but makes me just a little bit different, is that I am a trained actor, and I grew up acting, and I am a trained pianist and a composer. And blending these things was the sort of freaky thing. And you have to go back to Rachmaninoff, who said never conduct in an orchestra and play the piano at the same time in the same concert. Why? Because the musculature is different. You know, when you're doing this kind of conducting thing, it's a very specific kind of musculature. When you're at the piano, things have to be loose and in control, and that has been the crazy thing in all these pieces, is trying to combine musculature of things that are not supposed to work together.
When you say all of these things, the previous show, which I did not see, was the Irving Berlin show.
Well, there's Berlin and Chopin and Gershwin.
This is kind of a niche for you.
So,
well, yeah, why not?
Why not?
I mean,
why not indeed? It's a great idea.
A niche, well, look, the thing is you do it, and if people come, God bless. And so it started, and all over the country, people do come, and they come big, long runs, big houses, and here in New York, it's been wonderful. We've been sold out every night since the beginning. We extended. The unfortunate thing is that theater throws you out because they have a season, so we're only able to extend another 8 and something just another week.
You wouldn't look for another theater yourself?
Well, you know, the problem is I'm booked.
Oh.
I mean, you know, I am looking for a year from now, not for this show, for Berlin, because I think Berlin is very much so broad New York show and a very different side, a much more lovable character, you know.
How did you fall into this ditch?
I love the way, what I heard was, how did you fall into this ditch?
Okay, not quite what I would ask, but...
Charlie, enunciate.
It was brilliant. How did you fall into this ditch?
He was riding a city bike.
Truth is that I didn't really think this would be anything. It was a curiosity. I always acted. I always played. And I knew that being a concert pianist, because that's what I grew up doing, was going to be a lifelong commitment, sitting behind a piano, and I'm a social person. Now, I still practice my 6-7 hours a day, especially with the repertoire I have to learn, but there is a certain kind of crazy that goes into being a solo pianist, that it's a monk-like way of life. It just is, and it's constant, and there's never, and you know, and you play concerts, and the pressure is enormous. I wanted a way to talk to audiences at the same time, and not just lecture, but be characters and do these things that I do. And so this sort of fell into my lap, 20 years ago. The Gershwin became a success, and all of a sudden said, what are you doing next? Now, what are you doing? They still ask me today, Bernstein, this is wonderful, what are you doing next? Or, I think you should do Cole Porter. Nah, not me, you know. We'll leave that to the Gentiles. You know.
Well,
I was going to say.
Well, actually, Bernstein talks about Gershwin in your show.
He does, and he actually...
And that was complimentary.
Yeah, he was complimentary that he thought Gershwin was a great tunesmith, but he did not particularly. It's not that he didn't like Rhapsody in Blue. He liked it and played it all over. It's that Bernstein had a side to him that needed to diminish. And this I knew from people who knew him. It was Mike Nichols who actually was the one who told me to do Bernstein's show. And he told it to me in Chicago. He was doing Spamalot, and I was doing Gershwin in another theater, and we were living a floor apart in the hotel there. And we would meet after the show in the lobby, in the bar. And a couple times, 3-4 times he did it, and he said, "So they laughed by you tonight?" I said, "Not much." He says, "Me neither." And the next day, "Did they laugh?" Yeah. He says, when Elaine May, were doing shows, we used to chase around Broadway to find out where they were laughing. And he says, it was always a sickness. He says, across the board, people wouldn't laugh. Across the board, people would laugh. Maybe it has something to do with the air pressure, what's going on in the city. But at any rate, he said to me, "You need to do Bernstein." I said, "Why?" It was such a deplorable character. He says, "You need to do Bernstein." "Why?" He says, "You've got that Jewish thing going on." I said, "What does that mean? Is it the nose?" He says, "Not necessarily. It's just that Jewish thing. You too have that Jewish thing going. You not so much."
I'm only half Jewish, so that's why you don't see it.
So like Windsor Brown.
Yeah. So and I said, and then he says to me, "But he was terrible." And I said, "Okay, well, He said we were walking down Fifth Avenue when I was a kid, and he had his arm on my arm, and Mike Nichols was 100 feet tall, and Bernstein was 100 feet short. I mean, he was tiny. He was 5 foot, literally 5'4", 5'5", and he said he had my arm in it. And he said, "Mike, we know you're talented. We have no idea at what, but we know you're talented." And he said he had that sort of propensity to diminish, and that's what he does with Gershwin's Rhapsody. He says, "Well, it's a great hit tunes, but it's hit tunes in search of a composition." And he actually wrote that in his book.
But you did something interesting with not just Rhapsody, but a number of other songs that Bernstein was involved with, and that was to bring in the Jewish element. Speaking of that, the Jewish music, the tonalities, the klezmer aspects.
Look at the majority, the bulk of his serious composing. Even if you look at Chichester's Psalms, it uses a Jewish psalm in it, and Chichester's Psalms doesn't sound like it should have, a Jewish psalm in it. And his First Symphony, it has Eicha in it, and his, which is the traditional lamentation in summertime for the loss of the temple. And then you look at his Kaddish Symphony, in memory of John F. Kennedy. You look at his Mass. The Mass is sort of functions around anti-Catholic things as opposed to Catholic. So it's very Jewish, and he was very Jewish, and he studied. But I think, it comes down to the very basics. He wanted to be approved of by his father and up until the day he died. And his father was tough until the day he died, and so I've been told by the children.
Well, you have a great story about the father when people asked him, why did you oppose his music career?
Yeah.
And he answered.
The critics in the green room after massive success at his debut when he was 25 years old at Carnegie Hall. The critics gather around him and says, "Why did you oppose?" He says, "Well, how was I supposed to know that he was Leonard Bernstein?" I grew up like Bernstein grew up. You get a serious job, you make serious money, then you can do what you want. You always need something to fall back on, that thing. Now, my parents were very supportive. They weren't negative, but I'm still a first generation. So I didn't grow up with what the second and third generation grew up with in New York, whereby already the parents were taking their kids to concerts. You were going to the New York Philharmonic from the time you were a child. You were going to the young people's concerts. You were doing those kinds of things. No, I was going to school and studying in yeshiva and practicing piano and being serious. And so I know what it was to have been. That's the part of Bernstein I really do understand.
What was the most surprising thing you learned about him doing this show?
I think I was very hurt by how the lack of generosity he showed to his wife. That's why I wrote the piece in the end, because while he comes across as troubled but sympathetic, I think the children were grateful to me, and I felt a very deep feeling for her, what she must have lived through. And somebody, I won't say who, because somebody who is, the child of someone famous, but not the Bernsteins, wrote to me and said, what a difficult life that must have been, because for all their own inner torture, they didn't get to be Leonard Bernstein. And I thought, that, and I wrote her back, I said, that's the most beautiful writing. And that's really the case, that the children and Felicia didn't get to be him. They had to live in his shadow and yet live with that difficulty.
But isn't that true of any genius? Isn't that what happened with Picasso's family and
Sure.
the horrible? There's a phrase for it. I can't think of it. Never mind. It won't. It'll come to me tomorrow. And
Of course, when you don't need it, it'll be just fine. But I feel
the monstre sacré. That's
yeah,
the kind of thing.
yes, absolutely, and that's who he was, and I felt very deeply for that. You know, the notion of what it is to be the around the monstre sacré, so to speak, and I thought that should. And the kids, they came last week. You know, all three of them in one show.
Really?
That was really something.
And that was their first time.
No, Alex had seen it before, but Jamie and Nina had not seen it. They knew about it. They had read it, and they knew me, but they'd not seen it. And I was very, very, very moved to have them there, because doing this stuff for them was, you know, and then having pictures of their mother up there, and they said, "Thank you for that." Because people didn't know that she was the glue to this whole thing, and then he publicly abandoned her. But more than that, he publicly humiliated her. You know, see, in today's world, maybe it'd be less of a humiliation if somebody came out or whatever it is, but then it was a real issue and a serious business, you know, especially such a public couple. In New York, they were ambassadors,
Every Tchaikovsky, which is your next show. So this is out of whole cloth, basically. You're creating.
It's well, a whole cloth in terms of a theatrical piece, but not whole cloth in terms of what happened. And
no, but of course.
But it's a rough story, that Tchaikovsky. It's not easy, and the music is so great. And unlike Bernstein, where he's lecturing about music, this one is actually a great composer. So it's the suffering of a great composer, and that guy suffered and then died, and nobody knows how.
And he wasn't even Jewish.
And when will that be? When and where will we see that?
The first is San Diego Rep, and it starts January 11th. So I'm in the midst of putting this together and practicing like a maniac. So I go on the Bernstein set, and I'm at the piano playing symphonic reductions or piano reductions of the symphonic works. It's big, lots of big fingers. You know.
Real quickly, where can we see you performing Bernstein as maestro?
Bernstein is 59 East 59th here in New York, down the street.
And that's running through?
Now we're running through. We've been extended October 23rd. And that's when they throw me out, because I have another production. But it's been a real joy to be in New York and meet all these wonderful people.
And it's been a real joy to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that is our show for the evening. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.